Well, hello, my name is Christopher Scott, and I am the small groups pastor of a local church. And in this video, I'm going to give you a brief introduction of how to use the Warren Wiersbe Bible Study Series guides for the book of Hebrews, and how you can use this little book to do discipleship in a small group setting. So in this video, I'm going to go over three things. Number one, I'm going to talk to you about how this book is formatted and how you can use it with your group. Number two, I'm going to give you a broad overview of how to structure a small group setting. What are the different sections and types and things that you do in a small group? And then third, I'm going to give you a really brief introduction to the book of Hebrews to help you as a facilitator guide a discussion through this book. So the first thing I want to do is talk to you about how to use this book. This is the book of Hebrews, written by Warren Wiersbe, about living by faith, not by sight. And this book is divided up into 10 different lessons. And then it gives you an 11th lesson that you can use to summarize what everyone has learned and how they've grown through the study, right? So the 11th one is optional. You can usually add a little dessert or snacks or meal together, and it's a lot more abbreviated. So there's 10 different lessons going through the book of Hebrews. The book of Hebrews has 13 chapters, so there are going to be some lessons that overlap chapters or even cover 2 chapters, okay? And the Bible study series that Warren Wiersbe puts out really has 5 sections to it. There's the Getting Started section, so each lesson has 5 sections. There's the Getting Started section, which is first, which is usually 2 questions that basically just gets people in the text, reading it, talking about it, and making some basic observations. They're not going to be doing any deep theological discussions or looking up other parts of Scripture or anything like that. It really just helps people read the passage and to start making some basic observations for what they see. Then the next section they have is the Going Deeper section, which is usually about 8 questions, right? It's questions 3 through 10 in the guide. So there's 15 questions for each lesson. I probably should share that. So the first 2 are the Getting Started. Questions 3 through 10 are the Going Deeper section, and that's really where the meat and the bulk of the study is going to come from. So they're going to have you read the passage again, make ask specific questions of the text. They're going to have you read other parts of the Bible that might help you understand the passage you're studying, and might have you read some of the Gospels, some of the Old Testament, and bring together the Bible and really help you understand and really go deeper into the text and see what's there. And then the next section is the Looking Inward section. So that's usually the 11th and 12th question right in there. And so it just helps people kind of walk through, okay, this is what I read, this is what I studied, now what can I start to think of in my own life? How does my own life relate to what I've been studying? So it helps them start to wrestle with the text a little bit more inwardly. And then from there's the Going Forward section, which helps the people in the group identify something they can do and apply going forward in their lives in the following weeks. And then the last section, the 5th section, is asking for help. That's the 15th question in the lesson, and that pretty much just has the people write out a prayer asking for God and the Holy Spirit to help them apply what they've learned, okay? So that's how to use the Warren Wiersbe Bible Study Series guides. Each lesson is formatted that way. Every lesson is formatted in the same way, so once you do a few weeks, you kind of get the feel for it, and your group starts to get the feel for it. I think they'll really like the format. Next, I want to talk to you about how to format your small group, okay? So a small group is kind of a unique thing. It's a little dynamic and sometimes organic, but there are 3 key things I'd like each group to do when they do a Bible study like this. Number 1, the group should start with what we call the unifying question. That's something my senior pastor has taught me to have every group do, is called the unifying question, which pretty much just has the people in the group say, hey, what did I learn from this passage, or what did I learn from the message on Sunday at church? What did I hear during the sermon? What did I take away? What stood out to me? And you ask that unifying question in the beginning to get people talking. It's a nice icebreaker, but it also encourages people to actively be attending a church on the weekend. Even if it's not the church that you attend yourself, maybe you have 5 people in your group and they attend 3 different churches. That's okay. You can alternate who shares based on what church. But the idea is we never want small groups to become these little enclaves of groups that don't ever connect with the big church or anything like that. We want the small group ministries to complement what's already going on Sundays. We don't want it to replace it, right? So that's the first thing you want to do in your small group, is to ask the unifying question. The second thing you want to do is to simply read the passage, right? So let's say for here, Lesson 5 is chapter 7 of Hebrews, okay? So you're in lesson 5, you do the unifying question for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, really brief, really quick, And then just have someone in the group read chapter 7 of Hebrews. They can read it from the Bible, they can play it via audio on their phone, whatever that might be. Try to pick someone in the group maybe that likes to read or doesn't mind, and have them read, okay? So that's the second thing you want to do. So you want to do the unifying question first, simply just read the text, and then third, go through the questions. And you might not be able to get through the entire lesson each week. That's okay, because you can skip some questions, right? So a lot of times you're going to get bogged down in the going deeper section, right? That's questions 3 through 10 normally. So you might only get to question 6 or 7, and you guys are getting a little bogged down and it's taking a little too time. You can just flip over and skip to the question 11, where you can start to look inward or to asking for help or something like that, okay? So that's how you want to format the small group and how you use the book. Now it's time for a brief introduction to the book of Hebrews. So the book of Hebrews is probably one of the more difficult New Testament books, particularly because it relies so much on the Old Testament. And if I could summarize for you what the book of Hebrews is about, it is that Christ is better. 3 basic words. Christ is better. As you read all 13 chapters, if you read it over and over and over again and study it, you're going to notice a theme. Christ is better. Christ is better than the angels. Christ is better than the Old Testament law. Christ is better than the Old Testament priest Melchizedek. Christ is better than the Old Testament saints. In chapter 11, Christ is better. So if you can kind of come with that basic idea, that's a good way to approach it. And Warren Wiersbe, in his commentary, one of the reasons I really like the Bible study series that they put out by Warren Wiersbe is that he also has a commentary that goes right along with the Bible study guide, right? So as a facilitator, you have this commentary to give you a little background and helps and walk you through the passage a little bit more in depth than maybe the people are going to. That way you can anticipate some of their questions, you kind of know the big idea of the passage, and you can do a better job of facilitating the group. So in this commentary, I really like the outline that he gives. He talks about how the book of Hebrews has pretty much 3 main sections, okay? Number 1, a superior person, that's Christ, in Hebrews 1 through 6, chapters 1 through 6. Then there's the superior priesthood, Melchizedek, Hebrews chapters 7 through 10. And then there's the superior principle, faith, Hebrews 11 through 13, okay? So that's Christ is better. He is better than those things, okay? The book of Hebrews was likely written before 70 AD. So it's likely written before 70 AD because in the book of Hebrews there's a lot of mention to temple rituals, and they seem to be stated in a way that the temple was still standing and that those temple rituals were still going on, right? And so the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD. So a lot of people will say the book seems to have been written before 70 because the author just kind of states these temple rituals as if they're still going on. Okay, so that's one belief that's written before 70. Even if you don't count that, the priest Clement of Rome references the book of Hebrews in 95 AD. So we definitely know it was written before 95, probably before 70 AD. So that helps you kind of set it in context a little bit. The Apostle Paul wrote all of his letters pretty much between 49 AD and 67 AD. So that gives you a little feel for a lot of Paul's letters are probably out there circulating by the time the book of Hebrews was written, okay? The book of Hebrews was likely addressed to a specific group of Jewish Christians, right? So these were Jews that had become believers, became Christians, right? And we know that because there is so much Old Testament in the book of Hebrews. Every single chapter doesn't just have little verses that kind of reference the Old Testament or quote the Old Testament. It has big old chunks of Old Testament just plopped right down there in the middle of the chapter, right? So that's something that makes us think this letter was originally written to probably ethnic Jews or people that were Jews and with their religion and then converted to Christianity later on, okay? And then the one thing you're probably going to struggle with as you go through the book is chapter 6 of Hebrews, which is a difficult chapter that talks about how believers may lose their salvation, is what some people would say that's saying. And the interesting thing is that the book of Hebrews doesn't just have one chapter, one section in chapter 6 that deals with that. There's about 5 different sections that people will often call warning passages that basically says, if you're a Christian, you need to not do these things. So chapter 6 is one of those warning passages. And in the notes below this video, I'm going to give you a link to a blog post I wrote about chapter 6 of Hebrews that outlines the three main views of that passage and then the view that I believe is biblical to understand it. So again, that's one of those bridges that you'll cross once you get there. And then in the commentary on Hebrews, Wiersbe also outlines a couple of different views too, and then states his view too. So that is something you might want to check with your local church as far as salvation and eternal security. And if people can lose their salvation, you're going to want to check with your church and what your individual church and denomination believes before you approach that chapter. So my name is Christopher Scott. I hope this has been a great video for you to help you get a feel for the book of Hebrews and a good way to introduce you to these great Bible study series, the Warren Wiersbe Bible Study Series. If you have any tips about how to use the series or thoughts or questions, I'd love to hear from you in the comments and would love to catch you again in another video. So thanks for watching. Hope to catch you again in another video.